The State Department says Secretary Marco Rubio will travel to Israel early next week. Rubio's visit may suggest a longer timeline for any potential strike. Meanwhile, a confidential report from the International Atomic Energy Agency raised new concerns. It said Iran has not allowed inspectors to access sensitive nuclear sites, saying those sites were heavily bombed during a 12-day war launched by Israel last June. The agency says it cannot confirm Iran's claim that it stopped uranium enrichment after U.S. and Israeli strikes. Meanwhile, the U.S. ambassador to Israel told embassy staff that if they want to leave Israel amid the possibility of a strike on Iran, they should do so today. Joining us now to discuss is Gerard Filitti, Middle East Affairs analyst and attorney specializing in international law. So, Gerard, good afternoon. By your assessment, what is the likelihood of a U.S. attack on Iran, given where we stand right now on negotiations?
Negotiations have not progressed sufficiently to look like we are close to a deal, or even remotely so, even though they have been going on for a while. Not just formal negotiations, mind you, but back-channel discussions that have been taking place for many weeks now. So I think that as time goes on, we are increasingly likely to be engaging Iran militarily, at least to some extent. We have the balance of forces that we need in theater, and the longer they stay there, the more likely it is that since Iran is not coming to the table in good faith, that they will be used.
So just speaking generally, what is your view on whether Iran will permanently dismantle its nuclear program and its nuclear facilities?
Iran has no incentive or no reason to dismantle its nuclear program. It believes that it is an existential threat to the existence of the Islamic Republic if it gives up its nuclear ambitions. So it has continued and will continue developing nuclear weapons, nuclear proliferation, and ballistic missiles, as well as other technologies of war, despite what it may be saying publicly, because this is what Iran needs in order to survive. It needs nuclear weapons. It wants to become a nuclear power, and there is no incentive for it, short of full recognition by the rest of the world of its power and ambitions, that it would stop. Even then, Iran is a country that needs to, for its own safety, for its own sake, in order to control the people, it needs to maintain the strongest military it can, and that means nuclear weapons.
So, Gerard, I have a clip here of Steve Witkoff talking about negotiations. Let's just take a look here.
I know that we have red lines here from the U.S. How about over with Iran?
The president asked me that this morning, and I don't want to use the word frustrated. It's almost because he understands he's got plenty of alternatives. But it's curious. He's curious as to why they haven't, I don't want to use the word capitulated, but why they haven't capitulated. Why under this sort of pressure, with the amount of sea power, naval power that we have over there, why they haven't come to us and said, we profess that we don't want a weapon, so here's what we're prepared to do. And yet it's hard to sort of get them to that place.
So, Gerard, Witkoff talks about tremendous U.S. pressure here. Iran has seen what the U.S. military can do. So talk to us about the leverage here. Does the U.S. have enough leverage to, you said Iran does not want to agree, but given the circumstances, given the leverage here, is it possible to get Iran to agree to the U.S.'s terms?
The problem with Iran agreeing to the terms is there needs to be some enforcement mechanism. Remember, we had a nuclear deal that was negotiated before, and that went nowhere ultimately because Iran was able to hide what it was doing, that it was enriching uranium beyond a point, that it was continuing its weapons program even though it was saying it wouldn't. So the ability to verify that any sort of deal would actually take effect and would be meaningful, that's the challenge here, especially if Iran is refusing to hand over all of its nuclear materials, all of its uranium, all of its enriched uranium, to the United States. So the problem is one of basic trust. The U.S. has plenty of military leverage to bring to the table, but without Iran absolutely capitulating both in its nuclear production and its missiles production and its sponsorship of foreign terrorism, it's very hard to see why it would agree to anything, why the United States would agree to anything. Iran has been a danger to the U.S. and to the world for decades now, and finally we have a president that's standing up to them, and bluntly so, militarily. We have the forces that we need, and it really is beyond imagination that Iran would rather see its people die and risk war, risk regional war, instead of doing a sensible thing and give up terrorism and nuclear weapons.
So we played a clip earlier of President Trump saying sometimes you just have to use the military, the best military in the world. And the Iranian leader said that a U.S. attack on Iran would stoke a regional war. How are you looking at this?
I very much doubt that a regional war would be stoked. We know that Iran is likely to fire missiles if there is an attack by the United States, that Iran would attempt to retaliate broadly, hitting American assets in Qatar, in Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iraq, even bases in Israel. We know that Israel has been targeted repeatedly by Iran. But I think what we have seen is consultation by the United States with our allies and with other countries in the region. And I don't expect that anyone will jump in to either support Iran or to oppose the U.S. in striking Iran. Ultimately, Iran may throw a military temper tantrum, if you will, but the outcome of that will be preordained because the United States can very capably defeat whatever it is that Iran has to throw at anyone in the region.
Okay, so I'm not an expert here, but here's what I'm worried about. Is there a risk of escalation? Because if the U.S. strikes Iran and then Iran strikes U.S. military bases, does that risk another response from the U.S.?
Well, look, I think that ultimately what we will see is the United States has a set of objectives, and that will be triggered by whatever decision President Trump makes, whether it is to cripple the command and control structure of Iran, whether it will be broader and take out more military facilities, or whether it will be to decapitate the entire regime. However Iran responds, the United States will continue with that goal. So if Iran does continue or escalate and try to escalate a war, I think you will see America decapitating the leadership of Iran and allowing the people who have already been out on the streets protesting and demanding reform, that it will allow the people of Iran to take over their government. And that's the best way to bring about a resolution to this crisis.
Okay, Gerard, just one final thing. The ambassador to Israel, U.S. ambassador to Israel, telling the staff to leave. Does that make the situation look like things are not doing so well?
Well, that's a precautionary measure whenever you have that rhetoric of war, and Iran is threatening to launch missiles at Israel. So there is that very real risk that Iran might do something, even if the United States does not. So it is a very sensible move, and it follows what we have seen American personnel leaving other countries in the Middle East, in the region, for their safety. But all of this can be seen as an escalation, and that the United States is taking the final steps necessary to safeguard our people before we take military action in Iran.
Okay, Gerard, good to hear your insight. Thank you so much for speaking with us.
Thank you, Don.
AI company Anthropic has rejected